everybody, it's Tony here from WTC and Paul Anand from the Price Guide. How you guys doing today? I hope everybody's doing great. This is kind of a little special hot topic, maybe. I don't really call it a hot topic. I mean, I guess it is a hot topic because it is part of the news recently, so like that. And we thought we'd put together a quick little video to pay a little tribute to the one and only legendary Sabu. As everybody knows, Sabu passed away recently here, and at the age of 60. And we thought, as trading card guys, we would kind of cover some interesting, maybe a top three, a top five. I don't know what Paul's put together. He's going to surprise me and shock me here of some
Well,
top
it's
Sabu trading cards.
yeah. First of all, rest in peace to Sabu. He was one of a kind. He was a real special performer. He was awesome on the indie scene. And me being an old guy from Toronto, I remember his uncle, the original Sheik. And if it wasn't for the original Sheik, I'm not sitting here talking to you about wrestling. That's 100%. The greatest heel ever. So he learned from the best. And I had the opportunity to see up at Greektown at the indie shows here over the years. Sabu. On a few occasions, I didn't get close to him like you did, having him at your shop, and I'm sure you'll share that in a moment. But one memory in particular, we always, because we're close to the organizers, we're always in the front row. And I remember that there was a kerfuffle in the ring, and this was about 2, 3 years ago. And Sabu had a chair and kind of dropped it behind him, and then Melissa, Super Genie, she gets the chair with one hand and just flings it. And it doesn't go up like 3, 4 feet. Fuck, it goes up like 15 feet in the air over the rope and bounces in the rain and jumps as high. And Susan looks at me and goes, "Holy shit, she's strong." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then unfortunately, like 2 weeks later, she was gone, you know. And then, of course, we had the Janela match with Sabu, and I'm like, great to see that Sabu's still going because the last time I saw him, he was a little shaky, when he was
Yeah.
up here. He was a enforcer at that point, so he couldn't do anything in the ring. Although he did get in the ring with Janela. And then I was stunned. Steve and I were talking about that. We were looking at that Janela thing that's making the rounds where he jumps off the top of a building and down onto a table. And we were at Greektown talking about Sabu and next day, and then when we texted each other, it's like, yeah, what a loss. He was
Yeah.
so uh, great with the people, that I remember, a lot of these guys at Indies come do their thing and then bugger off. A lot of guys just go set up their table and try and do merch. But Sabu would walk around amongst the people. I banged into him in the can once, so that wall, that third wall or fourth wall or whatever you call it, didn't exist with that guy. But we're here to talk about cards. But I just wanted to say that why don't you tell us your memories, Tony? Because I know that you had
Well,
it was
I
once
have
at least
many.
you had a store.
Well, I mean, I have many. It's like that. I was friends with him for quite a long
A
time.
long
I
time.
drove up and down the California coast with him to different promotions. I've booked him for many, many years, like many other people have. So, but he's very kind. I think I made a social media post about him, about you know, he was just, he had the character that was on screen, but behind the scenes, he was very kind, funny, and caring, especially, an animal lover, especially dog lover. But he saw you were down and out, and he only had $50 left. He would give you the last $50 to help you out. Um, so I just talked to him on the phone about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. There was talk about him coming back to the store in September because I have, September's turned out to be kind of our hardcore month.
Yeah.
He was our first one in September of 2023. Then we had Sandman last year for in September. And we had someone else we're going to bring in for September and then pair him up with Sabu. We just, hadn't locked down a date yet. So, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of stories, but just hanging out with the guy and having dinners and driving around in the car together. It's like that was always never a dull moment
I'm
and
sure.
always fun. And so yeah, I'm a little it hit me a little hard. So I
We've
took a
lost
couple
a few
days
guys. Like
break.
again, I chatted with him a couple of times. Hello, hello. Kind of fanish like, but we'd have the things at the bar afterwards, and he was there, and I chatted with him, but so did everybody else. But you
Yeah.
were his friend, and you've lost a few people in these last couple of years.
Yeah, it's just you deal in that kind of business, and that's kind of how it is,
Yeah,
man. I think, and it's also kind of a sign that you and I and
yeah, we're
you know
getting old, aren't we?
Chuck's we're getting older. So as
Yeah,
we get older, these things become a little more commonplace, I think, unfortunately.
yeah. So,
So,
anyways, brother,
but
you and
I have
I, you and I are in the card business, so let's talk about Sabu cards.
Before we get to the car business, I want to share one little piece that I
Sure.
have, so like that, since we're in the share and tell kind of thing. I have this piece that I got from him years and years and years and years and years and years ago, so like that. But in this bag right here, I
Yeah.
do have the original green pants from the very first ECW pay-per-view that he wore these,
Oh wow.
um, that he had given me many years ago, and I'd never got them signed by him. Like back then, I traveled around with him, so like that, and I never even thought about getting them signed, and then when he came here in September a couple years ago, I said, hey, I still have these pants and the turbans like and the whole bitch like that and everything. And I said, I never had you sign. He goes, oh yeah, I was looking for those. I need to get those back. And I go, oh, I'm so sorry you can
Well,
have it.
this
He goes,
is
I'm
only
just kidding.
pair.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I said, oh, is there any way? Of course, I'll sign them for you. Yeah.
Nice.
And so the goal here is, and I've been meaning to do it for a long, long time, and I should have done a long time ago. But I'm going to get these things shadow box framed and put them up in the stores like that. It'd be
Yeah,
nice to just
definitely.
kind of display. 'Em.
Definitely.
But oh, fun fact, by the way, the turban thing he wears most times, as I've told you before, Paul, is just typically it's just the bed sheet from the hotel you're staying at.
Really? He wraps it around. And that's the
So
thing,
that's what I
like
got from here because he was,
neither his uncle, well, his uncle was Lebanese or from Syria, or like had that, but he was a first generation American. It was his parents and his grandparents that came from that part of the world. And Sabu's name was Terry. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like these guys, they were as American as you and I.
yeah.
But
So
anyways, we're here quickly to just if you're into Sabu and you want to buy some of his cards, we'll give you a sort of heads up on that. I'll sort of give you my thoughts, and then Tony, you tell me what you think. As I said earlier, because he did a lot of independent shows and stuff, when you go looking for Sabu cards, you're going to find a lot of indie stuff. And as I mentioned, because he was so uh, at one with the crowd, he signed so many things. So most of the
yeah,
Sabu cards you're going to find are going to be base cards that Sabu himself autographed. And I don't know if he charged for it or he was that kind of guy that Sabu on everything. Insofar as his formal cards, there's a few autographs. I think I sent you the other day, the Heritage 2 Chrome. That would be one of the top ones. There's a TNA one from the Impact series. Then there was a couple of Leaf ones, but my thought is that the most valuable card would have to be the 97 ECW from Japan.
yeah,
That's not a signed card, it's just a base card. But that said in itself, you can see those cards sometimes go for 300-400 bucks a piece. And his name would be one of the bigger names, I think, in that list. So that's what I would pick as the Sabu card. But I think that if you're in the market for stuff, I mean, there's lots of indie stuff. I know the major figure pod guys, they had a Sabu autograph. Corey Bastian must
mhm,
have a Sabu autograph. Um,
yep.
you did one,
Well,
did
I had one of those actually from Corey,
yeah,
and the dual sign one of him and Belfonsos like that.
right, right. I remember that now
Those
that you
were,
say that.
yeah, those were all taken and
Now,
stolen
did
when we
you in
got
your
broken
series,
into.
I know you have the base Sabu in your store series, your in-store,
Correct.
did you do an auto for him as well?
Nope, didn't do
Oh,
anything. The
okay.
plan was to do one with him.
Right, right. But like I say, if you go looking for autos, you're likely going to find base cards that he signed himself, and they're not that expensive. They're his name being an independent guy, like I would say the ECW probably would fetch the most just because those groups of cards are the most valuable. Obviously now,
But outside the independent stuff that is there any mainstream
yeah,
major
there's
companies that put out stuff?
yeah, Topps
There have been a
Heritage
few.
2 Chrome that came out 2007, and he had a signed card in there. I mean, it was a sticker. All those were sticker autographs back.
Sure.
There's like I mentioned the that one TNA set that had all the oddball autographs. He signed for that, the one that had like
Yeah.
New
That
Jack.
was that TNA Extreme?
Extreme. Sorry, I said Impact,
Yeah.
but Extreme. That's correct. Then he signed for Leaf, and the Leaf ones are nice because they're actual on card. I have a couple of those from the original series back in 2012. Those are the more formal releases, but again, because the dude was out there at so many indie shows and he had so many indie cards, and or through the Brotherhood how many different sets there are. Sabu's in
Yeah.
probably half of them, right? So a lot of people would turn up with those cards and have them signed, but
I just did a quick search on the WTC using the search engine up there to type in his name, and I'd say probably 90% of what searches is 4 pages worth of stuff that where he's mentioned, whether it be an article, of course, or checklists, it's like that. It's all mostly indie stuff.
yeah, yeah. Which makes it a little more accessible. Although indie stuff isn't, people are asking me like, "Hey, where'd you get that? Where'd you?" I've gone to all the Federation shows, I've never seen these cards, and I take for granted that we're in the Brotherhood. But those guys
Yeah.
open such a door for us, for me, for Chuck, like I rely on those guys, and Chuck decides what I get. I'm going to buy this one. Do you want one? Yeah, no, and usually I say yes. But that access is just phenomenal, and that's how I've gotten most of my Sabu product, I would think. I don't have the ECW. That's one of the few sets that I don't have, and I'd love to get that card. I do have the originals. I do have the Heritage Chrome signed one. I do have the Extreme one. But yeah, that's it's hard to find even the original Sheik, an autograph of him. If we talk to Ben and Main Event and those guys, I'm sure Rob England, the guys that do the vintage sign stuff, hard to get something from the original Sheik. And he's one of my heroes. Like he's the best heel I've ever seen in my life. Like Dominic Mysterio, that kind of crowd nonsense is what I heard when I was 11 years old at the Maple Leaf Gardens. It was insane. Like, the smoke-filled women with old ladies with umbrellas. That's what the Chic was, So it was my first sort of foray into that. But what else did you find on Sabu?
No, I mean, I kind of just was going by your list like that, but
Yeah,
when I did the search like that, there was an article written by Michael Morris like that on the WTC side talking about some of the ECW guys and stuff like that, and his name came up in that set. The Leaf set comes to mind as well, the TNA set. But yeah, I have to agree with you. I think the '97 ECW was it VHS cards that came out,
that whole set's
um,
iconic now, right?
that's pretty much, yeah, that's the iconic set I think for ECW, I think. But and then of course you got the action figure cards that he was in as well from the action
Oh,
figures. And the stickers and they had tattoos and different series had
that's right.
different things
That's
in it.
right.
But
That's right.
yeah, so there's a good variety of collectibles out there for
I
Sabu
wonder, I
stuff.
wonder if there's a micro brawlers. I didn't check. They got a lot of those.
I would imagine there probably has
It
to be a
might
micro
be.
brawler. It's got
It
to be a
might
micro
be.
brawler card for him. Matter of fact, I'm almost certain there is.
I'll have to check that. I didn't think about that. But
I
just
didn't think about that
there's so
either.
much independent stuff. And if you go on WTC or you go on Price Guide and look at all the stuff that you don't recognize, that's all the indie stuff. More times than not, Sabu's made an appearance with these places. He worked a lot. He
Which
traveled
is
a lot.
incredible to me that you have a big name like that that's just kind of referred to as an independent guy. He had his,
Well, that's
his what?
that's where he excelled. That's where his
Yeah.
his greatest moments were all at indie shows, I would think, right?
Well, he had that run there in ECW, of
Of
course. I
course.
mean, everybody's going to recognize him from
But even that,
ECW.
see,
That's
for me, I
probably
even consider that indie. I know it's not. We don't look at it, but
I
ECW for me was indie because that's the essence of it. That's what when I go to a show, I feel like was Philly back in the 90s.
ECW was indie before indie was cool.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you want to talk hardcore, right? Which people think started at DCW and the original Sheik started hardcore. He was doing shit with Abdullah the Butcher that wouldn't be repeated for another 25 years. And I was there, you know. So wonderful
So
memories.
yeah,
Wonderful memories.
but yeah, very cool. We thought we'd just do a quick little thing.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear from other people. If you have a Sabu autograph or
Sabu
anything
memory.
memorabilia wise of
Yeah.
Sabu, what is your favorite piece that you have? What is it you collect? Especially with the cards, like, do you own the '97 ECW, Japanese VHS tape cards? Do you have other cards that of Sabu that we haven't mentioned? Love to hear in the comments from people who have collected stuff over the years and it's just, sad to see him go, man. Sad to see him go.
Yeah. Great loss. Huge, huge loss.
But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode like that. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Yeah.